Cory.
What is it? The days are long, but the years are good.
Days are long, but the years go by fast. That's what they say with kids, by the way.
That makes sense.
All right, here we are on YouTube.
Woohoo!
And all the places. All right, we're live, session 24. Cory and Cory launching a WordPress product live. Woo! A lot has happened.
Is there a loud rumble behind me, by the way?
You're the audio guy. You got to have the sound effects.
Right. No, I meant no. I have my air conditioner blowing on me, so I'm worried that it's.
Oh, no.
Okay.
I thought you meant you wanted to like cue a drum roll or something. I'm like,
right. Boom. Very dramatic. So, yeah. Oh, right. So we did chat briefly last week, post WordCamp US, and in the throes of COVID, at least for me. You survived, right? Or you guys escaped unscathed, but lots of reports from WordCamp US. So yeah, we a quick recap. We thought WordCamp US went okay. We had good feedback. We did not. I did not feel like we got to spread the word as wide as I'd hoped. In part, mostly, I think just like the way that the camp was laid out this time, I found it a lot more difficult to jump into conversations like I had done previously. I liked the openness of it, but the way I finally figured out how to explain it to my satisfaction was it did not, the previous camps in the sponsors hall, it felt like a cocktail party. And so you were never more than an arm's length or two away from other groups of people. And so it was really easy to overhear a word and then jump into a conversation right there. But because this hall was so large, and then also the center of it was occupied by just huge rooms of sponsors that a couple I checked out, but most I didn't have any real reason to like go near. I wound up literally standing in the middle of the room, and like nobody was within 20 feet of me, even as people were passing me, because they could. So, just logistically, I found it was more difficult, but gave out lots of cards, got some people on our mailing list, had some really good conversations, got some really good feedback on pricing and on tech. It helped me change some of the wording. I had a lot of people say to me, I know what open graph images are. I know I'm not doing them right, which is always an interesting statement when people say that, because it's like they don't actually know that. They just, in the context of the conversation, they assume that, I'm the expert, and so they are not. And so a little self-deprecation. They are probably still not doing them right, but they don't. I would assume that most people don't know what right is, which is interesting. But also that a lot more people were focused a lot more on featured images, at least in conversation.
The things we talked about there, like the featured image editor and the little buzz phrases you had, that's really good. Like we talked about was some of the best takeaways where people kind of capture what it is we're doing. And I think only with those live things, you and I did a lot of work, right, but having people there that can give real feedback and you're communicating, I think is excellent.
Yeah. And the majority of our conversations between us were about open graph images, featured images as a result. But it's like a featured image on a blog post requires people coming to your blog post. But that featured image, as it gets shared, so acting as an open graph image is where you and I were like, oh, this is amazing, because it's, assume that the spread is wider, that the impact is greater. But again, I think people are not really thinking about it quite like that. So there's some education there. So one of the first things I did, I came home and I added more examples to our homepage. So I had put up two examples of, like, when you shared a link on Slack, it gave no preview. If you shared a link on Twitter, it was a gray box. And then we were just saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Here are some examples. And then I said, oh, okay, people are thinking about featured images and open graph images separately. So I added 2 more examples and changed a section to be called like featured image examples and open graph image examples. And technically they're kind of sort of the same thing. But I think they illustrate the difference well. And a lot of people, like, there was actually a guy tabling, and he like called me over, and I was like, okay, he's going to try to sell me his hosting or whatever. And he was like, you're the OMG IMG guy. I love the examples on your homepage. They finally make it clear what an open graph image does. And I was like, whoa, like, huge win, Yep. And lots of compliments on the language that we were using. So I made it even spicier, even more fun. Going, what was it? Facebook fail to Facebook fantastic, LinkedIn lame to LinkedIn luscious, Twitter tired to Twitter totally awesome, and Slack sad to Slack satisfied.
That's the kind of personality stuff that really endears people. I think you're right on about all the things you said about the conference and not being as big, but I do think for OMG IMG, but I do think really good. What I found and heard was really good feedback, customer type feedback. There's something here. We don't know how big it is, but there's something here. It's not just you and I going, there's something here. There's more people saying that legitimately. And then even the things you're talking about, it's like people willing to, they're interested enough to understand it better to help us. And I think that bodes well for the public rollout.
Yes. Yeah.
It caught attention. We're doing enough to catch attention.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it helps that we're talking about it. It helps that it's images. It's a surprising number of people said, I'm really surprised this doesn't already exist, which can be a good or a bad thing. But people were generally excited about it. And I think also images are things that people understand, even if, like I said a minute ago, they don't think that they're optimizing their OG images particularly, but everybody has the experience of writing a blog post and then needing an image and attaching an image, or uploading products to a page, or using a page builder and injecting images. So it's something, it's part of the WordPress process that people understand, which I think is easier. It's one of the less abstract concepts I've had to deal with in products, which is nice.
It's a huge takeaway to say, get it out as quick as you can with every opportunity into the wild, so that people interact and give you some better feedback.
Yeah. So with that said,
yeah.
If you could slap me, this is where it would be appropriate. If you could reach through Zoom.
Oh no.
So
did you recode? What do you call that?
Refactor. Refactor. Well, but so the joke for everybody listening is last week I had a punch list of things to run by Cory, And I said, one of the things is I'm finding the code more and more difficult to update as we want to add more features and stuff like that. And he very rightly said, deal with it, suck it up, just keep moving forward. And that was the right decision in that context. However, there was underlying that. So I've been a developer for 25 years. Jesus Christ. A very long time. And at this point, I have a mature instinct in development, right? And for weeks, maybe even months now, you, Cory, have been asking me, saying like, presets is the thing. Like, we need to go in and we need to design a bunch of presets so that people can come in and just say, yes, I like the orange one, or I like the blue one, or whatever, right? And I kept adding features, tweaking things, and adding the ability to save presets. For a while, I was like, I'm not sure how to do this. And then in the last 2 weeks, I looked at it and I was like, oh, I can do this. This isn't a big deal. But there was something nagging me. And I'm like, oh, it's the rewrite thing. Like, my developer brain just wants me to, to tighten things up. And I was like, no. Like, let's look at this. And I actually got as far as there was a button that said save preset. But again, my developer gut, and you'll just have to trust me that, like, I was able to look at it and go, okay, I'm not just being pedantic and like wanting to rewrite the code. There's something wrong here. And in particular, and it's one of those, like, you start, essentially you paint in code, like there's a lot of ways to paint yourself into a corner. And as I went, as we had a image builder and it worked, but then as we took the image builder the next step, so it was like the next step down the dark hallway, I was like, oh, okay, we are in fact painting ourselves into a corner. And that's where I stopped. And so I was like, okay, this isn't about refactoring code. My gut was right in that there's something literally wrong with this. And so what I finally, the light bulb finally went on. I was like, oh, okay. The problem is I banged out, we say that it took me 3 months or something, but technically I banged out a product. And along the way, I proved the tech that we could like render, create images, render images, use save images, right? The problem is to get there quickly, the format of the data stored in the back end to explain how to render an image was quick and dirty. And so as I was looking at, the ability to save these in bulk, aka presets, I was like, oh crap, like, we're painting ourselves into a corner with this formatting. Like, things were hard coded. And so I was like, now is the time, because it's, if we released the product as it is, and it's not a huge lift, relatively speaking, it's not a huge lift to take a step back and revisit that formatting. Because I realized, like, if we put this out in the world and people start using it, pretty quickly, I'm not going to be able to add more attributes to these templates, right? Like, you can inject an image and you can rotate it, and you can, but if you wanted to add borders and you wanted to add, because there's, we're talking CSS attributes basically. So there's not an infinite number, but it goes on and on and on. It was like, I can't add all of those things. At some point, we're going to hit a wall. And when we hit that wall, I'm going to have to write a ton of code that's going to, with the next version, would go in and rip apart everybody's images that they'd created and have to like migrate all of it into a new format, as opposed to taking another week or two and just having it create the right format in the first place.
Mm.
So you should be rolling your eyes. You should be smirking because I understand how it sounds.
No, you made a technical decision based on your experience.
And that's
You made it.
that's where we're at. Yeah. I'm disappointed because it's like I don't want to be right. Like I
Mm-hmm.
was perfectly happy to accept that I was not going to refactor based on what I was thinking of last week. But yesterday, so the other side of this at least is I tweeted about it today. I had my Silicon Valley moment where I actually went in and like basically blew everything apart and was like, look at the core. The actual value is
Mm-hmm.
describing these image templates. Start from there and build up and out. Um, and so I was up most of the night coding because it turned into one of those sorts of things. And I actually have a really neat, much better user interface. Not totally, no, totally different from what you saw, what we had before, but infinitely extensible and a much better, easier build experience.
Yeah.
And right now it's still a little technical, but we can keep adding, the UI can change forever. But that how do you describe, it's like when
Mm-hmm.
somebody finally explained to me like why blocks in Gutenberg were a good thing. And it's similar to React and a bunch of other technologies where elements on the page are designed or are represented in code. You've got a block of data that says, what type of element is this? It's a paragraph. Does it have, if it has an align attribute, it says left, right? And then you can, if you've got something represented well in code, then you can do anything with that, or in data, you can do anything with it. And that's the difference. I was like, oh, if we keep going down the path where our data is hard coded is wrong, then this is going to be a nightmare later.
So where are you at right now?
So my hope is I'm making great progress. I'm hoping not more than another couple of days, honestly, but
Okay.
if life happens, then another week realistically.
Okay.
And the ability to add presets and all that stuff, like I have to go back to those features that we wanted, but so I'm expecting all in all a 2-week delay. Like if we were going to be able to create presets today and theoretically launch tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
I want to give myself at least a couple of weeks.
When do you think we'll do the preset template work? Be able to do that?
I'm going to work hard so that we can do it next week.
Okay. Okay. I knew we had that in mind today, so just wanted to keep that because still believe that's the intersection right there.
I agree.
And hopefully everything you've done really gives us some sounds like cool options for that. So
yeah. Overall, like the nerd part of me is finally satisfied. And then it actually has led to a better image builder, I think, because we were walking down a path where, basically every attribute you ever wanted on an image, rotate, border, if we wanted to add filters, if we change the size or you align it top or bottom or left or right, like all these things were just going to go add on and on and on and on. Whereas now it's all dynamic essentially. So it's all built in. So it'll be easier to manage all of those things now too, from a user perspective.
good deal.
Yeah. So thank you for your patience. You've dealt with developers before. You know how this goes.
I have. I understand it. Yeah, I mean, the summary is, it sounds like you made a good decision, and it's got numerous benefits. So getting it right now, I think, is a good decision. When I was last week when we talked, that my mindset was, I know refactoring. Every developer that comes into new code or looks at their code paths, it's writers and artists too, want to redo everything they did. And so my general thing is always go, no. Time budget is another, consideration in that, helping bolster that decision. But it really does sound like you which is great for the project because you see the future.
Mhm.
Downstream you're going to be maintaining this, and know it's going to make your job easier, and that's going to go back to the customer. So I support it. I'm happy to come here and say, don't do it again, when
Yes,
you
sir.
need it. But I think that's a good tension to have. And ultimately you made a gut decision, and you had some fire and energy under it. So those are wins in my book.
Yeah, agreed. And it was sort of a neat mental exercise for me as well, because like I said last week, I couldn't have told you why, other than it was getting more and more difficult to maintain. Okay, fine, suck it up, and also, and I'm pretty good about that, because as we've talked about, we're both starters generally. And so I'm comfortable with messiness. I'm comfortable with refactoring as I go, rather than walking in and going, okay, I have to start over. It's the one file gets to be 1,000 lines. Okay, how can I break this into 2 files? Rather than, all of this has to be redone and perfectly laid out and all that kind of stuff. Like, I have high tolerance for that, because in general, I'm the kind of developer who cares more about product than code.
Yeah.
Which is why nobody should ever look at my code. It's good enough, but that's what I aspire to. Safe, reliable, good enough. Doesn't have to be perfect. But last week I couldn't have made those arguments. It was just like, there's something, this is eating at me. But anyway. So switching back to other topics, I did send out a first email to the people who have signed up to our list so far.
Excellent.
The just kind of to start teasing it, right? And to start a conversation. I need to look at how many people unsubscribed, because one of the first responses I got was somebody said, I actually went and unsubscribed because I signed up weeks ago and I didn't remember what you were. And when I Googled OMG IMG, I got the wrong thing, because there are other domains out there. And so I was like, oh, right, I should have explained any of that in the newsletter. I should have included the URL. I did not. I should have said, hey, remember us, which I did not. So lessons learned. But conversation started, and I got good feedback. Because an easy way to send a first email is to ask a question. So
Yeah.
I now I actually want to set up an autoresponder, so that if people subscribe, they get an email right away that says, thanks for signing up. Tell me what's going on with you today that made you sign up. Well, we will set up the same sort of thing. If somebody purchases down the road, we'll say, today you bought Y. But so I since we already missed that window with people signing up, I just wrote and said, please hit reply and tell me why, if you remember, what prompted your interest in the first place. So, and the first reply we got right away was another plugin developer who's trying to promote his product, said, I know I could do a lot more with the images attached to the content that I'm trying to put out there to help garner sales. So it's like, okay, that's great. Yeah, we're among friends and sympathetic people who will help us get this thing off the ground.
Heck yeah.
So that's what I've got this week.
Okay.
Anything on your end, or we can go have lunch?
Yeah, I think that's good. When you're able to do it, I'm eager about those. Nothing's changed on that front about the presets.
Yep.
So it'll be great.
Yeah. And I mean, to be clear, I agree that it is the number one priority. And so that's what I'm racing back to, essentially. So
Roger that.
cool. Hopefully next week I'll keep you posted.
All right.